So how is it that Obama trusts a thug at the expense of his most important ally in the Middle East? How does he do that? Politically, it's suicide. I'm not going to go into the personality of the president. He's basically a good person who has his heart in a particular direction, which I disagree with, but is basically an all right kind of person for the most part. Nice father, good family man, good husband, cares about the people, common people. Why did he abandon Israel? Well, let me tell you, there are two things in this. Number one, Israel should never have put its hope and defense upon someone else other than God, and work to protect themselves. That is an exhortation from the prophets. One could say, well, Israel is a small country, and the United States is the only superpower left in the world, or the greatest superpower, and we needed to hitch our chain to the great superpower. And this is a mistake. You never give up your own security to satisfy somebody else, because when it's convenient, they leave you alone and your security's messed up. That's number one. The Torah says that the Jewish people will stand alone and will have to protect themselves by themselves. And that's what it says in the Torah portion of Hazino. There is no protector. There is no power to hold us up other than God himself. That's what's going to happen, and that's what happened. But there is a spiritual reason why this is happening. A few months ago, they had this election where there were a few confused and deranged politicians who got elected by appealing to the worst possible element among people. That's jealousy, rage, and prejudice. And who were they attacking? They were attacking yeshiva boys. Yeshiva boys don't go to the army. And since there's a lot of them, it's about 50,000 of them, can't have 50,000 people who don't go to the army. Well, it's a lot of Arabs, they don't go to the army either. They don't want to go to the army, and if you put them to the army, they're going to go ahead and become quislings. But there are Arabs who are citizens of the country who don't go to the army. That's not an argument. It's because you don't like the fact that the yeshiva boys say, you go and protect me and I'll sit and study Torah. That's what they're objecting to. And I understand the objection, because if somebody doesn't understand or believe in God or God's Torah, then one would find this offensive. But in the Torah, it says that the study of Torah is protective of the community at large. King David sent Joab out to fight, while King David himself studied Torah. At first, King David was involved in the battles, but then the people of Israel saw that this was getting dangerously close to him. They didn't want him to die, so they told him, you sit back and study, and your study will protect the rest of us. So these people, these politicians, deny that, don't believe in that. And so they made a whole tumult that they were going to get rid of the exemption for the yeshiva boys. They still haven't enacted it. You know why they didn't enact it? Because the yeshiva boys won't go. And what are they going to do? They're going to arrest 50,000 young men who refuse to go. What if they said that they're conscientious objectors? You couldn't force them either. Now, there's a difference between a yeshiva student who doesn't participate in the economics of the land, doesn't get very much except for his own food and water, and studies Torah and is totally dedicated to God. That's different than somebody who's married, has a sex life, has children, and demands that other people pay for his needs. If you're taking money from the government for your family, and you've got a responsibility to feed that family, you've got a responsibility to protect that family, then you have a responsibility to protect the community as well. That's totally different. But yeshiva boys, you attack yeshiva boys, you know what happens? You lose your own protection. Obama's not protecting you, which means that it's almost impossible for you to organize an attack on Iran. Let's not kid ourselves. Iran is a huge country. It's almost 700,000 square miles. That makes it almost 100 times the size of Israel. It is a mountainous country. There's an enormous amount of rugged terrain. And you've got to pinpoint where the uranium enrichment is going on. And it's in different locations. And it's subterranean under deep tunnels in mountains. How are you going to knock them out? How are you going to get there without being noticed? As long as you had the United States behind you, you could rely on the United States to give you those bombers, those long-range bombers to do the job. But now you got to do jets and refuel them in midair. That's a trick in itself. And where are you going to do it and over whose territory? Let's not kid ourselves. Even if this would come along, it would be nothing less than a miracle to actually have it fulfilled and the planes return safely and have their targets destroyed. That doesn't mean I'm against attacking Iran. It means that it's quantifiably, qualitatively different, totally different, almost impossible from a practical standpoint. And why have you lost the protection of your greatest protector? Because you threw off your own protection. You took off your spiritual protection, so God took away your physical protection. So you say, well, Rabbi, you're all wet. Look, I'm calling a spade a spade. You attack the yeshiva boys, which is this is Bava Seinai. This is the pupil of the eye. The most precious thing that God has in this world are the students of Torah in all the yeshivas. And you've attacked it. And you want God to protect you? I don't mean to say that Bibi will be unsuccessful, but he's just made it that much more difficult. And he did so because of his own giving in to those elements of prejudice who refuse to understand that there are people of a different idea. You know, I was a yeshiva boy once also, and I understand, though, that you have to protect the country. And today, I'd also have to go out. I'm not a man of war. I have to go out and have to protect the country and take a gun. But as a student in the yeshiva, you couldn't get me to do that. You'd have to drag me to jail, and I'd go to jail. Because I believe that a yeshiva student has the right to worship God totally and not go to war. That's my belief. That's the belief of 50,000 Jewish students. We may be crazy, you're right, but you can't force your belief on someone who disagrees with you. And now you have the proof, tangible proof, that you've done the wrong thing. Your protector is gone. Now what are you going to do? My suggestion is you make peace with the yeshiva boys and attack Iran as soon as you can.